Well, in around about 18 hours' time, a landmark legal battle will get underway in the Federal Court of Australia. This is the case known as Tickle versus Giggle, but that's where the comic nature of this court case starts and it finishes. The founder of women's only app Giggle, Sally Grover, has been taken to court by a transgender woman, a biological male, Roxanne Tickle. His name is because he claims he should not have been banned from participating on the Giggle site. Now, this is way more than just a case to determine whether Sally Grover can actually ban transgender women, biological men, from her women's only site. It will be a global legal landmark in defining whether transgender women are in fact women, just because they say they are or they say they want to be. On the eve of the start of proceedings, let's speak with Sally Grover. Sally has worked in the American film industry as a scriptwriter. Before that, she was an entertainment reporter in both Australia and London. She's co-authored a novel and has a master's degree in journalism. Sally Grover, welcome back to TNT.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Are the legal butterflies flapping around yet?
Oh, it's such a weird, nervous and anxiety-filled feeling. I've never been to a situation like this before, so it's all like incredibly new to me. But sometimes you're in this war of the magnitude of it, and then how kind of ridiculous it is, because we're going to court to try and determine what a woman is. And I maintain that we all know what a woman is. We have always known. Nothing has changed.
So your legal team needs to convince the judge of this. It's a judge-only trial. How many days is it? Give us the logistics of what begins from tomorrow.
Okay, so tomorrow from, I think it's 9:30 a.m. And so it's 4 days. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
4 days, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the allegation against me is gender identity discrimination. And part of our defense of that is a constitutional challenge. And that is because what happened, unbeknownst to most of us, in 2013, the Sex Discrimination Act was changed and the definition of sex was taken out. Yes, the definition of sex was taken out of the Sex Discrimination Act, and the definition of gender identity was put in. And it's quite a bizarre definition. It's effectively like gender identity is gender identity mannerisms. It's very circular. It's incredibly subjective. It's in no way immutable or something that anybody would be able to know instinctively from in any sort of context. So we are making an argument that gender identity shouldn't have even been put in the Sex Discrimination Act because our Sex Discrimination Act is based on CEDAW, which is a UN convention, which is effectively an international bill of rights for women, and it is for biological females, and which there's no other kind. And it does not mention gender identity in this context of it replacing sex in any way, shape, or form. So there shouldn't even be a situation where someone can be accused of gender identity discrimination when they were doing something on the basis of sex.
Right. This is such a complex argument, and a complex argument for the judge, because he's dealing with an act that, according to your argument, has been drafted wrongly, right?
Yes.
Wow. How much preparation goes into a case for this? I presume that now you are in, Phillip Street somewhere near a legal office. You're about to go in to see the wigs. You're about to talk to those who might be fighting your case tomorrow and the staff involved. How much preparation has gone on legally leading up to tomorrow?
Well, for me, I mean, this has been going on since January 2022. That's when I received the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint alleging gender identity discrimination. And for it to be settled there, I would have had to agree to let all men who claim to be women on the platform and go to sex and gender education. And I was like, well, I'm not going to agree to that. And it's not just that I wasn't going to agree to it. I knew that I also had rights. And when it was brought to my attention that the Sex Discrimination Act had been muddled in the way that it had, and my rights were very much being ignored by the Australian Human Rights Commission, it made me go, no, I really actually have to stand my ground here, because I cannot be expected to give up my rights, one, to female-only spaces, but also to freedom of belief. I think while that's not the part of law specifically that we are addressing, I think that people should have the right to not believe that men are women. I think that's really, really important for everyone. So when it became, when I became very aware of the fact that my rights were not being considered at all, I got very scared then. And then it went, because I didn't go to conciliation, I said no to it, knowing I wouldn't agree to it. It went to federal court. And so now, I mean, it's been that long, since January 2022. To put it into perspective, the week I got the AHRC complaint, I was 15 weeks pregnant. My daughter's almost 2. So it's been a really, really, really long time, and so much work. And you just sit there and go, how can there be this much work involved in establishing what a woman is? This is what a woman is and what a man is something we have always known. Once upon a time, humans didn't know what shape the earth was, but they knew who was a man and who was a woman then. Like, it is one of our most basic pieces of knowledge.
The amazing thing is this becomes a very complex legal case, but it's surrounded by or based on a very simple definition.
Yeah, well, no, completely. I mean, either the category of woman is adult human female, a biological category with very strict boundaries, or there's no point to it. What's the point of having a category of women if anyone can call themselves that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good argument. Look, despite what some in the LGBTQI plus community claim, you are not anti-trans. That seems to be the very simplistic way to argue what you're doing. In fact, you've been tremendously supportive of the community in many ways, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, when they say that I'm transphobic or they say that I'm anti-trans, what they're forgetting is that I support and welcome the females with a trans identity onto the platform. They're completely forgetting about this side of it. Once again, females are forgotten. No, I live and let live. But please live and let live back as well. Thank you very much. And in terms of the LGBTQI plus community, the L in that, lesbians, they were the first to ever come under attack from the T in that community. Lesbians are women who are attracted to women. That category is also very important. As are gay men, are men attracted to men. The T in the community tries to dismantle all of the categories so that those 2 letters mean nothing. So in terms of my support for the community, yes, it's just there. Who I'm not supporting are heterosexual men who are claiming to be women. Yeah. That's who.
Yeah. You're also designing, as I understand it, a dating platform for this community in your next edition of Giggle. Is that right?
Well, we had a lesbian dating platform in the original one as well. I mean, Giggle has been offline since August 2002, August, September 2002. We had taken it offline so that we could sort of update it and do a new build, but because we are a very tiny startup still in our MVP phase, we did not have the money to do a new build and keep it going. And it has remained offline because this new case was filed before we could put it back on, and we wanted to protect the platform, so we didn't put it back on. But yeah, we had a lesbian dating platform then, and we will have one when we hopefully eventually get to relaunch as a female-only platform. Yeah.
So, so the lesbian community is very close to the trans community in some ways in Sydney. What have lesbian members who were attached to your app, what have they said about this case to you?
I have so much support from the lesbian community, and I support them right back. I don't think that any lesbian should be told that she has to accept a male partner just because he likes to wear a dress and call himself a woman. That's homophobia. I think that's absurd. Just in Edinburgh this past weekend, there was a Let Women Speak, a Kelly J. Keane Let Women Speak event, and there were people holding up signs saying "Dykes love girl dick." That's homophobia, just out there on the street. Like, okay, express your abhorrent opinion, but be prepared for some pushback.
Let me ask you about raising money for this. This is not a cheap operation. How have you gone about this? How much money do you need to pay lawyers? And what are you going to do if there is a fine to be paid at the end? And surely you've got to cater for that.
Yeah, so we have crowdfunded this because it's $500,000 to defend us in this case. It's been, honestly, it's the kindness of strangers from all around the world who have donated. It's just regular people who have realized that there is something really serious going on, and that our freedom of belief, our freedom of speech, and freedom of association is under attack, which are the bedrock of a secular liberal society.
Yeah.
Have come to the party and helped us. It's at gigglecrowdfund.com is our website.
Gigglecrowdfund.com.
So we're at $442,000 we've raised so far, I think. So it's just been absolutely amazing. I went to the UK recently to do some media there, because other than you, as I said, you were the only journalist who has so consistently given me a voice, and I needed to raise awareness. This case was allowed to go ahead because it was deemed in the public interest. I was like, I think people need to hear about it, and I need to raise money. And so yeah, I went to England, and the UK have been amazingly supportive. So I'm forever grateful, and how I'll repay everybody back is by working damn hard to make sure we have rights.
I'm very interested in the support and the lack of support that you've received throughout this 2 years. I've got to take a break now for a news update, Sally. I'll come back with you in just a second, and let's get back to Sally Grover. Okay, so the media. You went to the UK. What kind of media was interested in covering your story, and what kind of media were you avoided by?
I have always been avoided by any kind of, what would we call them, mainstream, lefty-leaning legacy media. I mean, I have emailed them every week for the past year. Nothing, literally nothing. So I went to the UK, and it was fantastic. They were just it's obviously they have many more options of media there, say, than we do in Australia. So GB News was fantastic to me. New Culture Forum, Spectator TV. I will say I was bumped from Piers Morgan. I was so devastated about it.
You were bumped? What for? Why?
I was bumped for Riley Gaines, and I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I know Riley. We could have spoken together. I was so devastated, but it's okay. She's fantastic. And Riley she's doing a case in America where she's taking them to court, whereas I'm being taken. So we want the same outcome, but it's similar, different.
But you're right. You should have been producing the program, or you should have been hosting the program, because with you and her in the same room, it was actually, this is what's going on at the moment in terms of legal action to prove the point.
Exactly, that women from all around the world are having to go to the court, whether we're being taken there or we're willingly going there, just to be able to say, women is an adult human female, and it's really important that we have women's spaces and women's sports, because we actually need them to participate fairly in society. We all know what society looked like when women weren't included in law and we didn't have these things. It was not great for women. It might have been great for some other men, but no, for a lot of men, it wasn't good either. It's a better world where women are participating properly in society, and these are measures that improve that ensure that can happen.
And you don't need to be a NASA scientist to understand how much of an advantage you have as a transgender woman, biological man, if you've been through adolescence and, went through the growth spurt that you do as a man, and create the muscle mass and the other advantages that you therefore take into your older years when you end up competing against women. It's unfair.
Completely. I mean, do I wish that women were as fast and as strong as men? Yeah, what a great world that would be. But we're not. So we have to play the cards we've been dealt. We've just got to live in reality. It doesn't mean women are worse than men or lesser than men. It means we have different skills that are just biologically determined. Are there some really brilliantly strong women out there? Yes, but a man in the same class will still beat her. And so that's why women's sports were created. We didn't create them so that we could have pillow fights at the end. They were created so that women can actually get a fair go and win things.
Nothing wrong with a pillow fight, Sally. Come on.
But if it was just an open category for everyone, women would not be in this. There's a great website. I think it's called boysversuswomen.org. If I'm Google it, if I haven't gotten that correctly, but someone has done this brilliant website where it just shows that teenage boy record holders beat the world record holders of women in all but one sport. This is totally established and understood. You just have to look at the numbers.
It's a no-brainer, total no-brainer. Okay, let's travel through 4 days. It'll be over before you know it. What are the legal repercussions either way? And I don't just mean that in an Australian context. What about, can the UK High Court, if it were to have a case of a similar nature before it, use the precedent created by the federal court ruling after these 4 days?
Exactly. Yes, because of CEDAW, because of CEDAW, which is signed by 189 nations in the world. The UK, for example, has ratified it. Australia has ratified it. We incorporated it into our Sex Discrimination Act pretty much in full, like very much. We're quite unique in that way. And so, in a way, the challenge, or not the challenge, sorry, the defense of CEDAW was always going to come from a country like Australia or New Zealand, because we have basically defended it all along, and incorporated it into our law. So for us, if one, obviously there's a winner and loser in federal court. We would definitely appeal to the High Court if we had a loss in the federal court.
Right.
I obviously I can't speak for the other side, but we would go to the High Court. The High Court in Australia is a court of appeals. It's an error in law court. So we would be going to the High Court on the basis that an error in law has happened because sex is not being given weight or precedence in the Sex Discrimination Act.
Yep.
And from there, whether it's a federal court win that we have or it's a High Court win, countries around the world who are signatories of CEDAW will be able to cite this case, Tickle v. Giggle, as a precedent for ensuring women's rights in their countries.
Okay. Let's get back to the media in Australia then. Has it been the same pattern? Mainstream media like the Channel 9s and the Channel 7s and the Channel 10s, have they hidden under their desks trying to avoid you like the plague?
Yeah, Channel 9 Gold Coast did one story. I think it was still in the AHRC complaint stage at that point, but they did one. I was really shocked that they did, but I've never heard from them again. Channel 10 and Channel 7 have never responded to me. The ABC has never responded to me, shockingly. But I mean, these are, especially the ABC and SBS, these are platforms that will, or publications that will constantly write articles either celebrating trans issues or writing articles saying how marginalized this community is, but they're not actually doing any articles about the other side of the actual conflict that the Australian Human Rights Commission does admit there is a conflict in the law between sex and gender.
Mm-hmm.
They've then just gone in on the side of gender, and places like the ABC are just going along pretending that there's absolutely no conflict. And then if anybody speaks out against this, or they just sort of dismiss us, don't give us a platform, and just say, oh, they're bigots. I'm not a bigot. I actually think you can believe anything you want about yourself. I'm just saying you can't force me to believe it. It's that simple.
And therefore you cannot force others to accept that and give you the entitlements that biological women normally have.
Exactly. These categories are really important. These rights are really important. We're just defending them. We're defending something that was already fought for.
So it's interesting with the ABC, because there is Chris Anderson on a frequent basis, whether it's in print or in a Senate inquiry, often telling us that there is no bias at the ABC. A court case of this magnitude is not covered by the ABC. How else do you describe that except bias coverage?
I mean, go onto ABC and do a search. They've never covered it. I'm not making it up.
Well, that's bias. It's bias by deletion.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think I've said this on your show before. I find it really shocking that they haven't covered it from the other side. Like, why haven't they written articles saying, look, oh my gosh, these poor trans women who were not welcomed on or allowed to use the female in the app. This is a travesty.
Yeah.
But they haven't even gone into bat for the community that they apparently say are the most celebrated / marginalized. I find it very suspicious that
okay, let's dig down. Let's not pull any punches here. Why, do you think?
I think because they know I'm right.
Right. That's interesting. You've been involved in another battle over the definition of a female, and we've covered this on Sky when I was working there a few years ago after giving birth to your daughter. You found that the government forms you needed to fill out in the hospital at the time described you as the birthing parent. Whatever happened? I wonder when it was that they changed the name from mother to birthing parent.
That was the craziest story, because obviously since understanding that this craziness was even happening, I suddenly started to realize that they were changing the language and whatnot. And then I'd just given birth to Belle. I was there. I was filling out the Medicare form and it said birthing parent. And I knew where that came from. It was this inclusive language that is designed to eliminate a mother and separate it from being a woman. And I was just like, are you kidding me? I later on found out that it was only being trialed apparently in 3 hospitals in Australia. And it just so happened that I gave birth in one of them while they were trialing it. I just put a thing on Twitter about it, as I always do, and go like, oh, look at this. This is ridiculous. Nothing has ever happened from that. But then suddenly Bill Shorten was like, oh, yeah, we'll change it back. I don't know what has happened since. I have not given birth again. So I don't know if they've snuck it back in because
it's worth asking the question, though, isn't
it? But yeah, no, I mean, that was just a pure coincidence, but it's all part of the language change. It's all part of this newspeak. And no, it's not even inclusive language, because in terms of Medicare form for a new baby, I mean, adoptive parents, they're not included. What about gay dads? Where's the parent that's signing the Medicare form? No, it would be the legal guardians, the legal parents. So no, it wasn't even inclusive of this community they claim it to be. It's just all about separating anything that's actually to do with being a woman from being a woman, so that men can claim to be women.
Because there are some mothers who may not want to be regarded as a mother.
100%, 100%. So in that sense, it would be an adoptive mother who would be signing the Medicare form.
But see, this is where I become very, very irate, because I'm seeing it in all aspects of life at the moment, especially in the United States, where, you know, we jump over ourselves to include minorities, to get very DEI about our modern living. And in doing so, these woke organisations do so much for the minority that they automatically discriminate against the majority, Sally.
Well, I mean, I think that there's no problem with going and meeting a demographics or a minority's needs. But if you are going and giving privileges to a group of people at the expense of other people's rights, that is not equality.
Mm. Okay, so tomorrow, when do you get into the witness box? Presumably you'll be there and you'll be cross-examined, and it will be lively. When does that happen, and how many other witnesses will occur? And do you have a witness that actually says, I'm a scientist, and can I tell you that sex is binary?
We do actually have an expert witness, Professor Colin Wright. He's an evolutionary biologist. He's brilliant. He's spoken out a lot about this issue, and he explains why biological sex is binary and cannot be changed very clearly, very well, for the layman to understand. You know, we're not all scientists that can understand all different things, but it is actually, you know, simple enough for us all to understand. I mean, we live our lives knowing that human beings can't change sex. So, we've got Helen Joyce, who is amazing. She wrote the book Trans: When Ideology Meets Reality, and she's the director of advocacy at Sex Matters in the UK. She's one of our expert witnesses, and also is Professor Kathleen Stock, who has written extensively about why basically the concept of legal sex is nonsense. Legal sex is gender identity ideology. They want to change, basically create legal sex that it's anything you identify as, it's not your biological sex. So we have amazing expert witnesses. I will be cross-examined at some point, and that's it. And
you're about to go into the bunker with a whole heap of legal eagles to prepare for tomorrow, no doubt.
Yes.
Sally Grover, all the very best for tomorrow. 4 big pressure days, but no doubt you'll come out of it glowing. And after that, of course, if you do lose, you can go to the High Court. All is not lost. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Chris.
No problem whatsoever. Sally Grover from the former website Giggle. Giggle versus Tickle. You've heard me say it and explain it enough on this program. It begins tomorrow at around about 9:30 in the Federal Court of Australia, with enormous repercussions for courts right around the world. So why is it then that the mainstream media of especially television stations like 10, 9, 7 and others, newspapers in particular, why are they not covering it? And why have they not covered it over the last 2 years? Because they're biased? Because it's too controversial? It upsets a minority group? And what, we don't report on real news anymore if it happens to upset a minority group? That's not the way that I was taught to cover news. Let's take a break. Happy to take your calls as well on our talkback numbers. This is Chris Smith on TNT.